Hi everyone, welcome to the Piano Keys. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Marina and I create videos and courses to help people all over the world reach their piano goals without years of lessons. In this video, we're going to be talking about if practicing scales is a waste of time. Recently, I posted a video talking about a new way to practice. And in that video, I talked a little bit about scales. What some people heard me say is that practicing scales is a waste of time, or that you shouldn't practice scales, or that you don't need to practice scales. Let's take a look at what I actually said. By the way, I've had a lot of people ask me if practicing scales is a good idea. So the very short answer to that is yes and no. If you practice them correctly, it's a great idea. If you just play them over and over, going up and down on your keyboard, it might even be a waste of your time. So I never said practicing scales is a waste of time. In fact, being able to play scales and arpeggios well and fluently and as fast as you want and as correctly as you want to is really important. Why? Because all the music that you want to play, that you're ever going to play, is made up of segments or parts of scales. And arpeggios are really just parts of scales that are put together in a certain way. So all the music in the world is made up of parts of scales. Okay, so now that we've established that I think scales are really important, let's talk about why I think that the way that most people practice them is a waste of time. So here's how most people approach learning scales. And I'm talking mostly about people who teach themselves or even people who take lessons. So this is how it's usually done. You'll buy a book of scales that has the standard fingering for each major and minor scale, and then you'll practice these scales starting on the first note, which we call the root or the tonic of the scale, and you'll go up one octave, maybe two, and then you'll come right back down to where you started, like this. So that's actually the best case scenario where the fingering and the notes are considered kind of easy. So then when you practice the scales that are considered more advanced or harder or more confusing, you really start to mess up on the notes and on the fingerings. And you hammer it out over and over, trying to remember the fingering, trying to remember the order of the notes. And you might spend 10 minutes of your practice time, hopefully not more than that, just hammering away and getting frustrated and making very little progress in actually memorizing the notes and the fingerings of the scales. So if you do this, what have you gained? And you come back the next day and you keep practicing this way because you've been told that learning to play scales and practicing scales is important to learning the piano. But like everything else in life, how you do something is very important. How you practice scales makes a big difference on whether or not you actually get any benefit from them. So if you take a look at the pieces or the songs that you're playing or that you want to play, you'll notice that almost never is there an instance where you play a particular scale starting on the first note of the scale, go up one or two octaves, end on that first note of the scale, and then come back to the first note of the scale. That almost never happens. What generally happens is you play a few notes from a certain scale going up or down, then you might repeat a couple of notes, you might play a segment of an arpeggio, you might play a segment of a different scale in a different order, and almost never do we play these scales with the fingering that we use to practice the 2 octaves up, 2 octaves down version of practicing scales. So basically, what you're practicing or attempting to practice when you're trying to memorize the notes and the fingering of the scale, what you're practicing has very little relation to the music that you're playing. As a music student, I also was taught to practice scales starting on the root, going up 4 octaves, playing in parallel motion, in contrary motion, playing in octaves, playing in thirds, playing in sixths, playing in tenths, playing with different rhythms. Have I lost you? Well, these are all different ways to practice scales, but even that isn't enough. So when I started branching out from classical music, when I started to learn jazz and Latin music and musical theater and pop, I started to discover that there are different ways of practicing scales. So you can start on a different note of the scale. You do not have to start on the tonic or the first note of the scale. So for example, if you're playing a C major scale, you don't have to start and end on C. You can start and end on D. So you're still using the same 7 notes of the C major scale, but now you're starting on D, going up to D and coming back down to D. That's just one example. You can start on any note, you can end on any note. So let's say you start on E, you go up 3 octaves and you end on G and you come back and end on F, but you're still playing all the white keys, which is basically a C major scale. Let's take a look at an example of that. Okay, so we know we can start on C, end on C, and then come back. Well, we can do the same exact scale starting on D, and I can follow as closely as possible the same fingering that I did in the actual position of C. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. So let's try that. Okay, still using the notes of the C major scale. If you know about modes, then you know that that's the D Dorian mode, but we're not talking about modes right now. We're literally just talking about the notes that are in a C major scale and starting and ending on different parts of it, okay? So I can also do the same on E. Or F, or G, or A, B, and then back to C. So that's using the same fingering, but I don't have to do that. I can do it like this. So here's our home fingering, right? So 4th finger's on D. Okay, if I start on D, I can also start on 4th finger. Then if I start on E, I can start on 3rd finger. And on 3rd finger, okay? When I'm starting on F, I can start on 2nd finger. So what I'm doing is getting very comfortable moving around the C major scale, starting on different notes and using different sets of fingering. Another thing I can do, let's say I'm starting on C. I don't have to end on C. I can go to E and then come back. So let me show you that again. All right, I can also start on C and on F and come back to E. Let's try that. I'm just picking random things here. And then keep going. Okay, so what am I doing here? I'm becoming very, very familiar with the world of the C major scale, which in this case, you know, they're all white keys, so much easier to do with C major scale. You can always expand to other scales. Then I started making up my own ways of practicing scales. And one of these I like to call chunking. Let's take a look. So I combine parts of the scales into chunks, and the way that I split them up is basically by hand position. So if we take a look at, for example, the E major scale, we have this hand position, 1, 2, and 3, and then we have this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I can practice the chunks, playing all the notes together, like that. And if I wanted to do 2 octaves, then I would do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I can come back down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. So why would I want to practice like this? Because I'm teaching my mind and my fingers, instead of all these separate bits of information, which I have to keep track of, I only need 2 bits of information. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now it's the same thing as saying a phone number. You know, you've got, how many numbers do you have? You have 7 numbers, but you don't say the 7 numbers one after the other. You group them, right? So you would say 555, 5555, right? So it's kind of like that. So it's, you can call it the phone number approach to learning scales. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'm going to repeat it, 1, 2, 3, to go up to the next octave, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I only had to really remember, you know, this bit of information, and then this one. Then this one is the repeat of the first, and then this one is basically just adding the top note, okay? So I can also chunk with rhythms like this. I'm still thinking about the hand positions, but instead of playing all the notes together, I'm playing one note at a time. Then I'm pausing in the spot where I have to switch to a new hand position. The reason I pause is so that I give myself a chance to think about it before it happens. So this would be the first position. I pause here, and now the second position. Then I pause here because I want to go first finger under, and pause there, first finger under. Now I'm going to come back down, pause here, third finger is going to go over, pause there, fourth finger goes over, pause here, third finger goes over. So in this way, I'm giving myself a chance to think ahead before I make any mistakes, because remember, the more times that you repeat something, the more it's going to stay in your muscle memory and your brain memory. So because practice makes permanent, you want to make sure that you're practicing is, as much as you can control it, you're practicing what you want to remember. You don't want to remember the mistakes, so try not to make mistakes. Obviously you will, but you know, that's why we're pausing here to think ahead. 1, 2, 3, pause, thumb goes under. 1, 2, 3, 4, pause, thumb goes under. 1, 2, 3, pause, thumb goes under. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then come back down. 4, 3, 2, 1, pause. 3, 2, 1. Pause. 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause, and 3, 2, 1. All right? So I call that chunking. You can chunk by playing all the notes in one position at the same time, or you can chunk with rhythms. Okay? If you like this video, click the thumbs up, subscribe, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. Okay, so do I think that it's important to practice the standard fingerings of scales in the 4 octaves up and down version? I actually do think it's important, and here's why. When you learn the notes of a scale and you learn the fingering pattern, what you're doing is you are working on your technique. So you can focus on finger independence, you can focus on speed, you can focus on different ways to accent music, and you're also leveling up your mental ability to learn and process and play music. So playing the piano is not a fingers only activity. I'm sure you've realized that. It involves a lot of mental activity. And when you practice scales and arpeggios and you can organize your mind around each set of notes and fingerings in different scales and arpeggios, you're actually training your mind to think like a musician, which will then help you to do everything else that you do at the piano much better and easier and faster. Another thing that's really important in practicing scales is that you're learning how to navigate different shapes and patterns, which again helps you with your technique, getting to know your way around the piano, and it also helps your musical mind to get stronger. Somebody asked me in that video where I talk about creating your exercises, someone asked me, how did you know that that little piece of music that you played was in the key of A minor? And how were you then able to play it in all these different keys so easily and so quickly, seemingly without having to think about it? The answer is that I know my scales really well because I have practiced it both in the traditional way, which again is really important, but I've also gone beyond and done lots of different ways of practicing scales. So I've put in the information enough times that when I need it, it's right there for me to withdraw. Think of it this way. So think back to when you were in school, or maybe you're in school now, and it's the first day of school, not COVID times, but regular times when you're actually going in person and being able to see everybody's face. So first day of school, you don't know anybody in your class. Let's say there's 40 people in your class and you don't know their names. Their faces are unfamiliar to you. Their voices are unfamiliar to you. But through interacting with them daily over the course of a few weeks, you start to recognize their voices. You recognize their faces, you put them together with their names. You even start to know their personalities. So it's the same thing in music. The more time you spend actually interacting with different aspects of music, in this case scales and arpeggios, the more familiar they become to you, not only mentally, but also in your fingers. So if somebody says, hey, play an A major scale, your fingers can just go without appearing to having to think about it, but you've actually done all the thinking already. So it's become what we call automatic, right? So in that same video, I asked you to let me know if you're interested in me creating a course on how to practice scales so that you can really get the benefit out of them from the time that you devote to them. And many of you said that you are interested. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a course on how to practice scales. I'll probably do it in small installments so that you can get started and it won't be such a huge, long wait. So if you are interested in being on my mailing list so that I can let you know when that course is ready, then shoot me an email at thepianokeystpk@gmail.com. Don't worry, I'm not going to spam you. I'm not going to sell your email address. I don't have time for that sort of thing, okay? So if you want to hear from me, you write to me and I give you the information that you want. That's it. But I want to give you some actionable steps that you can take right now. So mostly the troubles that people have when they're learning scales is they forget the fingering and they forget what notes are in the scale. So I want to help you with fingering. So one huge tip I can give you is this. In almost every scale, I think there's like one or two where it doesn't apply, but in almost every scale, there's only one note in that scale that gets the fourth finger. Here's what I mean. So in the C major scale, the right hand, fourth finger only goes on B. That's it. No other note gets the fourth finger in the C major in the right hand, just B. In the left hand, the fourth finger in C major goes on D. No other note gets the fourth finger. So if you're practicing, and I hope that you're practicing hands separately first, just remember right hand B, if you're in C major, left hand D. Those are your fourth finger notes. So if you're not playing one of those two notes, then don't use the fourth finger. This takes away a lot of the guesswork, like where do I put 3, where do I put 4 when I'm going over, when I'm going under? Right hand B, left hand D. Okay, so every scale, almost every scale, has the same situation. It's going to be a different note for every scale. The other thing you can do for both practicing fingering and the notes is practice in chunks like this. Remember the chunking that I talked about earlier in this video? Here's how you can practice it. Find a scale that you want to practice. You can look at the music if you want to, and circle for yourself the different positions, okay? So if we're doing, let's say, D major scale, the first position will be D, E, F sharp, G, A. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So circle that as group 1. Then the next group is B, C sharp, D, 3, 2, 1. So circle that, that's group 2. Next, so we're going to do 2 octaves. Next group is 4, 3, 2, 1, E, F sharp, G, A. And the last group is 3, 2, 1, B, C sharp, D. So now you've got it in front of you, and you can practice chunking with all the notes at the same time, like this. Here's group 1. Hold on to that while you mentally think about, of course you think about mentally, while you think about the next group coming up, you plan it in your mind, okay? You know that third finger is going to go to B. You can see it there. Now pick up your hand and play the new position, B, C sharp, D. The next one, the group starts with 4th finger on E. So let's think about that. It's going to be 4, 3, 2, 1, E, F sharp, G, A. Pick up and go right to it. And the last group is going to be B, C sharp, D, 3, 2, 1. Find it with your eyes. Take your 3rd finger to B and play like that. Okay? So you can practice like this. You can also practice going down. So let's do this last group. It's going to be our first group now. And then the next one is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, A, G, F sharp, E. So take your first finger to A and play all the notes together. The next group will be D, C sharp, B, 1, 2, 3. So pick up and move 1, 2, 3. And the last group is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, G, F sharp, E, D. So take your thumb, put it on A, and play the other notes. Okay? You can practice like that. It will actually save you lots of time and trouble in the long run because you're really starting to see shapes and patterns and groups. Which is a lot easier to remember than a whole bunch of bits of information that you're trying to string together. Then you can also practice it with the rhythm chunks. So you play the first group, pause here, and think about what's coming next. 3, 2, 1, B, C sharp, D. Next group, 4, 3, 2, 1, E, F sharp, G, A. And then 3, 2, 1, B, C sharp, D. Going back down, let's repeat that. D, pause here. Now thumb will go under 1, 2, 3, 4. A, G, F sharp, E. Thumb goes under to D, 1, 2, 3, C, D, C sharp, B. And then thumb under A, G, F sharp, E, D, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's kind of a quick overview. You can pause and figure it out for yourself and apply this to practicing your scales. There you go. There are lots of really cool ways to practice scales that go beyond what most people do, the 2 octaves up, 2 octaves down, hunting and pecking and hoping for the best. All right, I have a really cool private Facebook group called Piano Practice Tips with the Piano Keys. That group is for people who are learning from my YouTube tutorials and from my courses. If you're going to ask to join, you have to answer all the questions and you have to agree to the group rules. One of the group rules is please do not spam one another. Don't ask for people to share free things with you that I sell. That's not cool. And don't go on there selling your own products. So we want to keep it a nice place to interact and ethical and friendly and supportive. I also have a Facebook page, The Piano Keys, where I post updates and things like that. I'm on Instagram, The Piano Keys TPK. I take pictures of my daily life stuff. And my website has lots of cool resources for you. Some of them are free, some of them you have to pay for, but all of them will help you level up in your piano playing. Keep practicing, have fun, and I will see you soon. Bye.